So we enter more and more into details concerning fundamentalism and the different aspects or many phases of fundamentalism. We analyze together religious fundamentalism, and we were looking for reasons or sources why religious fundamentalism is becoming more and more visible and more relevant for many people. Last time we were trying to look for sources of growing polarization using some politological analysis of authors who focused their attention on polarizers or those who are main source of polarization or those who were tracing signs of decline or deterioration of democracy, even asking a very dramatic question why democracies die. All this, I think, prepared us to enter into more focused debate or discussion in the United States, which I think one historian formulated in a very uh, intriguing way, namely Gertrude Himmelfarb wrote published the end of 1999, a very interesting book, One Nation, Two Cultures, which I put two chapters, one exactly dealing with this problem, if we have really two cultures in United States and what divide these cultures. And I think that Himmelfarb gave a very lucid and precise analysis of the present situation. She, as a historian, of course, paying attention to how these two cultures are functioning in America, how they are related to one another, and where the division or between different groups are now more visible than in the past. She's quoting Adam Smith, who was rightly so following also Marxist analysis. As you remember, Karl Marx showed the tensions between different groups, mainly on the line rich and poor, or tension between different classes. So all this are well known, but she's bringing this as a departure point for more cultural analysis, saying that actually today not so much the differences between um, uh, economics, but between ethics or between morality. And this chapter has a subtitle, "An Ethics Gap," and she's identifying different aspects like religion, race, ethnicity, sexuality. And the people who answer differently to questions related with this important topic are classified as different cultures, so to say. And I think this is very interesting to read, and so please do it. And also ask yourself if you agree with what she's proposing, because the main focus is not to read, to memorize many titles, many articles or books or authors, but to develop your own critical ability to evaluate texts which you read. So, for example, is convincing for you what this important historian who passed away a few years ago, but was very influential also as a person, as a personality in her um, vision of American situation. And I think that at the end of his book, which you can also read in the chapter which I sent you, she's raising an interesting question that we assist in one of the culture on the growing absolutophobia. Absolutophobia means that the people are afraid of accepting absolute value of something. That today is hardly you can find between the young people, so it's directed to you. If you really are absolutophobic, if you don't accept some absolute values, I have some problem with this. Particularly that Himmelfarb judging, of course, negatively those who have problem with accepting to accept some values as absolute. I personally, I have the problem because I think that we are biased, of course, because of our education, because of our age, because of who we are. We perceive the reality around us with very subjective eyes, but nevertheless, for the fact that I am aware that my understanding of the reality is partial, is not complete, is not absolute, doesn't mean that I don't accept some absolute values. So it could be, I think, a good point for exchange of our ideas. There are many authors also which she mentioned in her text, and some of them I will briefly mention now, because also I will send you a book which is a kind of polyphony, many voices of people who have different opinions on this two or many cultures in one nation. And what we have to add to this multiplicity of cultures or cultural voices present in the United States as the uh, dividing or polarizing factor, that some people speak even that we have to do with cultural wars. That we are so deeply divided, that we are so different, that speaking about cultural wars is more than right. I have also a problem with this, but you are more than warmly invited to have your own opinion about this. And I mentioned two authors who speak in this book, which you will have as a material for your reflection. Alan Wolf, who himself is a well-known cultural sociologist, politologist, author who writes on many subjects, and one of his polemic book was One Nation After All. So perhaps the division between us are not so big because it's more important what unites us. So one nation after all. And another who is actually more conservative is the James Davidson Hunter, who before Himmelfart's book published a book entitled exactly Culture Wars in 1991. And he's representing this position that culture wars is a part of American identity. That we are fighting against one another. It is not an invention, but it is the real fact that we fight against one another. And many supporters, of course, representing religious, political fundamentalists. Just let me mention George Weigel, very influential Catholic Catholic theologian, philosopher. More he wrote recently about Pope Francis, very critical, etc. But perhaps is just to keep in mind that there are many supporters of this theory. So where you are, um, uh, could we say, as Himmelfahrt, for all the differences, the two cultures remain firmly fixed within one nation? Is really something which we have to live with. I'm not sure, but as I said, I am open for your suggestion. And in the last few minutes of my warming up for our debate, I will draw your attention to a sociologist and political scientist, which I like very much, I have to admit, and Maurice Fiorina. He has this Italian name, but is American scholar. Now he is, I think, in Stanford University, and he wrote a very skeptical article in 2004, listening to all those supporters who are saying, yes, we are living in the very hard period, we have to fight, we have to struggle, etc. So he asked simple question: what culture war? What you are speaking about is a pure invention. They are politicians, they are religious leaders, they are some journalists who want to be popular, who want to be read, watched, and they invented this notion of cultural war. But when you look at the ordinary people, nobody is interested. 80, 90% of Americans are living quiet life. They are tolerant. They are empathetic toward others. So, which cultural war? So, I will send you also, this is just 3 pages, very provocative text, and I think is a nice summer up of this polyphonic or even cacophonic voices, which we can observe now. Now, I mean, last 40 years in United States, and I hope that we will come together to some conclusions that perhaps we don't have to absolutize too much what the other are saying, but we, with our critical eyes, with our critical ears, we will hear to them, we will watch them, but we will reserve for ourselves and comfort to critically evaluate what the other are saying, that perhaps we have, of course, tendencies. We have fundamentalists. This is out of discussion. I don't want to close my eyes that nothing like growing polarization or fundamentalization of religion is a social fact, but perhaps sometimes we need more distance to what we read, what we see, and to be more open for what so-called people, normal people, regular people are saying, in order to have more distance toward what is going on in the intellectual debate, because not only books published are important, not only films produced are important, not only big speeches of politicians are important, but what and how the people are coping with their daily life. And I think this is a very important corrective element to really understand the modern culture.